Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Our Cornerstone. Often, a lot of us may be questioning what is the purpose of our life, or why do we go to Earth if it's only for such a short time? If you relate to any of these questions, then tune into this episode. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that this is just a discussion-based podcast, and where we share our perspectives with evidence backed from the Bible. So yeah, let's get started. I'm Braden, and I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts Shevon, and Shennon. And today we actually have another special guest who came a long way. So, Ronald, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about your journey with Christ and how you came to Christ?
Hi guys, hi Braden and co. I'd just like to start off by saying it's a great honor to be here. And when I first heard this idea from Braden, I was just so excited about this, and it's such a great way to really, I guess, get this out to more people and let more people kind of think about God. So I just want to jump into introducing myself. I'm Ronald. I am studying in Australia right now, here in Melbourne. And I'm studying medicine right now in one of the universities in Melbourne. And I'm in my fourth year.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's really cool. That's a lot of study.
and I'll be graduating next year. So it is actually, time flies. I still remember my first year back in COVID 2020. They're fresh from my memory.
Oh, then you just learned about the virus, and probably all case studies were on the virus.
Exactly. It's like, our assignments like all changed to like, coronavirus phase and all that. It was pretty, and in the blink of an eye, it's 2023. It's crazy. So I am what some people may call a first generation Christian. So I'm the only Christian in my family. I became a Christian when I was 2013. That was when I was in year 8, or what they call in from my hometown Singapore. They call it secondary 2. So what happened was quite interesting because it was actually the Easter weekend coming up, and I was just, it was a Monday, I remember, and I was eating like prawn noodles in the school canteen, like by myself, right? Because back then I kind of like, number one, I didn't have a lot of friends back then, and I preferred spending time alone, and I ate lunch in the school canteen like way after everyone else ate lunch, so I could like kind of have the canteen to myself. I was eating, and then this random like senior who is, I think, year 10, stranger, but I could tell he's year 10 because their uniforms were different from mine, and he kind of walked towards me and asked me whether I was free to free on the weekend to attend like a social event. And I was like, okay, I've never received this sort of invites before, right? But and I don't know whether I should be like, nervous or excited, or should I trust this guy? But since he's wearing my school uniform, I guess I would trust him. And
in the younger stages, you get, don't trust any stranger. Don't take that.
And it's gonna be a trend in this story that it turns out I'm a very naive guy, right? So anyways, the guy kind of just told me it was a social event. It was on Good Friday, social event, and I was like, okay, since I have nothing to do on Good Friday, I usually just stay at home and chill and do whatever. Might as well go, right? Have fun, meet new people. I don't know why. Even though I was way more introverted back then than I was now, I just kind of felt that, why not, right? Because no one ever invited me for anything.
It's almost as if you felt compelled to go.
Yeah. And so might as well. So when I went, it was at kind of West Coast Park in Singapore, which is basically this park by the beach. They were having some, just some kind of like sports day kind of thing where people just played games and stuff. And then halfway through, the day, it started to become overcast, right? And it started to become overcast, and so they were afraid that it was gonna go. They were afraid it was gonna rain, so they all gathered in like under a shelter, and suddenly, like, it was noisy, right? Everyone was talking, and it was like it was close to about like 80 people, I guess. So it was a big group. Suddenly, everything went quiet, And then I saw that everyone's heads were like bowed down for some reason. And then one guy was standing in the middle, like saying something with his eyes closed. And then I was just like, what the heck is going on, right? And it just dawned on me like halfway through that they were praying. And I was like, what on earth is going on? What is this like? Am I like being roped into a cult or something? Yeah. Are they gonna like sacrifice me or something?
This guy invited me. Oh, definitely sacrifice.
Yeah, to like, keep the weather sunny or something, right? I don't know. So then after they finished praying, the friend who invited me was like, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that we're a Christian group. And I was like, okay.
So you went all the way there, not even knowing what's happening.
Yeah. I literally just went thinking it was like a social event of this like, youth group, because everyone was young.
Mm-hmm.
And so because turns out it was like a big church, so they have a whole youth group, right? And everyone was young and all that. So but I still, like, they still invited me. they still had the gall to invite me for the church service the next day. And I actually accepted, because what happened was that even though the person kind of like the senior kind of not tell me the full truth, but they were actually a really warm and friendly group of people, and I really felt the sense of community and friendship in the whole group that I've never ever felt in primary school or in secondary school amongst any of my classmates or my friends.
That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And it just felt so warm and welcoming, and they were also friendly. And so I was like, why not, right? Like, I don't think they're gonna kidnap me or anything, and like I have nothing to do on a Saturday evening, right, or Saturday afternoon. So I just went, and that was like the first time, because it was the Easter service. So it was the first time I ever heard anything about the gospel or anything about Jesus Christ. Because because back then I was very, very non-religious. And the only thing I knew about Christianity was that the symbol is a cross, and they believe in this guy called Jesus. I have no idea why, who, when, how, maybe the who, but yeah. So it was a very simple animated film about the gospel. That's it. It was a good film, by the way. Like, it was comprehensive. And really, afterwards, I felt like, wow, this Jesus guy is a really good man. He's a really noble man. I've never read anything or heard about any story where the protagonist made this sort of sacrifice for the whole of humanity. And I was like, so, it's pretty admirable.
And even for his enemies, the same people that were torturing him.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but I kind of like even though my mind was impressed and my heart was slightly moved, but I wasn't really touched until during the altar call, when the pastor kind of made the call to ask for, who wants to know this Jesus, right? And the fact that like God desires like a personal relationship with everyone, and what Jesus did on the cross, he didn't just do it for all of humanity in that very impersonal sense, but he did it for me. So suddenly it made it very, very personal that I actually have that what this person did, he also did for me. So I almost felt like someone made that sacrifice for me, even though he completely didn't have to. And in some sense, the Holy Spirit really touched me looking back, and I just started really crying, like really, I started bawling actually, like a baby, and I was like so touched. And the friend who invited me, I mean, we wouldn't even call him a friend, except the stranger, the person who invited me, was standing beside me, and he saw me, right, and he was like, wow, like this guy is really being touched. And so when the pastor made the altar call for those people who accepted Jesus to go down to be prayed for, he was kind of like edging me on and dragging me on, and I was like, I have no idea what's happening. I'm in such an emotional state right now, but you know what? Whatever, man. I'm just gonna go. I have no idea what's going on. So before I knew it, I was saying the sinner's prayer, and before I knew it, the service ended, and I was like walking out with like a face that like had tears before, and the tears dried up, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I was like left so, just overwhelmed by the whole experience. And then at the end of it, I was just like, okay, so what now? Like, do I have to come every week now? It's like, is that the deal? You know, like what's gonna happen? And then my friend said, it's okay. You just gotta well, let's just take it slow, and then we'll see how it goes. So I went home and I told my parents, and they laughed because they laughed at my naivety, right? Like the first time I ever went to church, I believe, and then I kind of like, want to go to church more and sort of become a Christian in that sense. So and fair enough, I was like 14 at the time, 13. So that's kind of how like my conversion story. But soon after, my parents realized that I was being serious. And so here's the backstory, right? Like my parents, and my whole family actually, they are from China.
Okay.
So they were brought up in this like secular environment under the communist regime, and so in their whole minds, like religion is basically kind of useless, and it is like a hindrance to everything you want to do in life, because it takes your time away, it takes even your money away, right? You know, like church asks for money and stuff. So they were really, you know, as typical Asian parents, the main thing they wanted me to do is to excel in my studies, and that's it. So they really forbade me going to church, and I would have to like, it ended up like for the next 1 or 2 years, I had to literally lie my way to service, or like say that I'm just going out with friends to go to like life group, to go to cell group, and yeah, or I would just, you know, when I got sick and tired of lying, because I don't like lying, right? And then I would just say that I'm going to go to service, and then they would be angry at me. They would lecture me for like an hour, and before finally letting me go. So I always have to like make sure that I, at the beginning of Saturday morning, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to service, and so that I can give the 2 hours for like the lecture to happen, and then after I
plan out hours before that. Like Ronald, like what were these lectures? Like were they saying that not to go to church and just follow life, or what were they saying?
Like, you know, like I already told you like why you shouldn't go. I told you not to go. Why you're still going? You know that going to church, these kind of things, is a waste of time. Everything that they say is like fake and like just there to brainwash you. And there are more important things in life that you should focus on, like your studies, right? So yeah, and so I guess from the get go, like it's quite interesting, right? Like after coming to Melbourne, a lot of the friends that I meet, like their parents like scold them for not going to church, but my parents scold me for going to church. Right. So it's quite the experience.
How ironic.
Up. Yeah.
No, that's something that really stuck out from the things you said, is how Jesus, in the moment that he was crucified, he not only did this for the whole, but he thought of each and every one of us individually. That is something that, it's absolutely moving.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing your testimony, Ronald. It really like touched all of us, and
I think that is like a really good testimony. I mean, like at the age of 14, to God, such a young age, and you know that look, you are chosen. I think like that this testimony is also sort of like based on our topic of knowing the purpose of our life. Like even at age 14, God still has a purpose for you, and he had this plan that was drawn for you, and still he approached you even at the youngest age. Like when I was at age 14, I was a Christian, but I don't think I was like Christian, like knowing, like having faith. Like I just followed Christianity like a religion.
As a tradition.
Like a tradition, exactly. Like go to church on Sunday, go to Sunday school, study the Bible. It's like history class, the Bible is. And you come home and then also just tell a prayer and things like that. And like how God touched you at age 14, that's like so awesome. Yeah, it's really amazing. And also it just encouraged us to see that, I mean, like you told us that it was a stranger who randomly approached you. Yes. If not for that stranger, if not for what whoever that person did, you wouldn't have been where you are right now.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention. It's how you essentially didn't do anything, but God moved all the pieces.
Yeah, and I like made your parents to put you to that exact school.
Exactly. Yeah, and even like for them coming to Singapore in the first place. So I'll tell you 2 very interesting facts, right? So, firstly, the fact that like the reason why my parents even went to Singapore in the first place was because in the early 90s, my dad received like, I think he read an advertisement on like a newspaper in his city that the Singapore government is looking for foreign skilled labor because they are like, you know, rapidly expanding their public housing, and because of that they need a lot of skilled labor in like construction and civil engineering and stuff. So my dad was that, and so my mom then, he was like hesitant to, you know, because of going abroad, new environment, stuff like that. But my mom actually encouraged him to like, why not just try it out for a couple years? If you like it, we can all move there. And so he came to work there for 2 years alone, felt that it was a great place to settle down at, and then brought my mom and my sister over. And so, and because at the time, China still had the one-child policy, so if my parents didn't move out of the country and move to Singapore, I wouldn't even be born. Yeah. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is related to the stranger who invited me, right? So what then he told me later on was that actually that day he was doing like just, you know, street evangelism in school, just kind of seeing who's around to, you know, send these invites to, because it's Easter weekend. And so he was getting a lot of rejections, right? And he was kind of getting tired and a little bit demotivated. But just as he was about to head home, he reached this like place where basically it's like essentially it's like a crossroads in the school. If you turn right, it's the school exit. If you turn left, it's the canteen where I was at. And then he was like, okay, God, you know what? I'm gonna try this one last time, okay? One last time. If this fails, I'm gonna leave, okay? But that's the deal. I'm just gonna try this one last time. So instead of turning right, he turned left to the canteen, and that's where he found me. And so imagine if he turned right instead and just left.
Wow.
My life would be completely different from what actually happened.
Yeah, it also shows that sometimes in life the devil comes and does things like it, just, you know, tries to demotivate you and give you this feeling that everything you're doing is just worthless. There's just no purpose to what you're doing. And then really at that time when you try to just take all that away and just give it your one last effort. And see, that just worked out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So interesting that it was his last try.
Yeah. And isn't it crazy, like, how you think that God actually planned all of this to actually happen for you to be saved? But yeah, we're going to be discussing this later in this episode. So, Shevon, did you want to?
Yeah, and that was an amazing testimony, Ronald.
Yes, thank you, Ronald, for sharing.
Thanks
No
for
worries,
having
yeah.
Alice to share that.
No worries. Yeah.
And so I just want to put you guys like, so now what we're basing today's topic is basically on like purpose-driven life and why on earth do we exist. And we all know this very famous book by Rick Warren. And so we are basically trying to like focus a bit on that book and use some topics from that book to navigate this whole session and this whole podcast. And I think we might even be having a few parts in addition.
Yes.
So if I just put out this question to you, like, have you ever wondered or like felt confused about the actual purpose of your life? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, well, I think everyone at some point in their lives can relate to this and can testify that they've been lost. They've been with no direction where to go. I would say even the Christians or even the people who were born with some sort of amazing skill, sometimes even they can feel like, okay, maybe this is not the right thing for me, or I'm a Christian, but I feel like I'm stagnant. Now what, right?
Yeah, true. Even for me also, like during my young days, like there were these moments in my life I was really questioning, like, why would we even be born? Like, why wouldn't we just stay in heaven and just not come to earth? And like, you know, it just didn't give me any motivation to even really face anything in the future. And then it was later on when I was touched by God that I kind of started understanding God's purpose for our life. And that's really what just made me want to dig deeper and just keep knowing and just study more, to learn and just to understand what He has for us.
Yes. How did you guys feel?
Yeah, so I think for me, when I was young, so like everything was happy, you don't do too much.
Happy
Then
to
as you get older, you find out more about the world, you get influenced by other people, then you start to have these questions, you have these doubts, question your faith. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they turn away from their faith. And that's when you really need to seek God. Like, that's the most important part. And that's how you mature in Christ. But yeah, Ronald, how about you? How do you think?
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. Yeah, I've wondered about this question a lot. Like, even before I became a Christian, I think what drew me a lot to Christianity, like even just to stay in this faith and not, backslide, it's the fact that it sort of gave my life an ultimate purpose in that sense. Because when, from like when I was 12 and 13, I was already asking, like, because, you, as a kid, you would have those, you wouldn't want to study, right? And when your parents tell you to study, you have like, oh, why must I study? Right?
Yeah.
School is work.
Yeah, you'll retort like, oh, why must I study?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, so you get good grade.
Yes. Yes.
So you can get to a good job, and then earn a lot of money and have a good life. And then like eventually it just gets to that point where, you ask there's that last thing, like maybe like some people would say, okay, so that you can be, I don't know, happy, or maybe you can have like a successful life. Then you have to ask, then I keep asking, then why must I have a successful life, or why must I be happy? And then eventually it gets to that point where you can't really go any further, because
quickly you run out of answers.
Yeah, you run out of answers. Yeah, and you just, and then I'm just like, well, I don't feel super excited about, having to go through all of these hoops, right? To study, so that I could get good grades, so I could get uni and go through all these things and good job, and eventually like get into that successful life, whatever that may be, just so I could enjoy that. Like at that time, I didn't feel very compelled to do that, and I just feel like it's sort of like being caught in this cycle of life with no really, like, I just felt dissatisfied. I just felt dissatisfied with that answer, and I just, there's gotta be something more.
Right, because that just cannot be the source of purpose. Because what if your life doesn't play out that way? Then what?
Exactly.
Or even worse, what if you do achieve all these things?
Yeah.
Is your purpose done?
Yeah, exactly. Or even worse, like in a more grim sense, what if one day you just need an accident, or like, you get cancer or something, and then you die before you actually, I guess, plan to die, or like hope that you would die. And then what happens to your life then, right? It's just gone.
Yeah.
You don't get to take anything with you into the afterlife, whatever that may be. I used to believe that the afterlife doesn't exist. And so that's just such a grim outlook on life, right? Because then it's like, well, what's the point of doing anything on this earth when eventually I'm just going to fade away into non-existence and take nothing I earn in this life with me?
That's nihilism 101 for you guys.
Exactly. Such a nihilistic view. And I think that's why a lot of people in this current day and age, like, they get caught in the rat race and like the societal pressures. And then when they take a break from that, and then they begin to ponder and reflect about life, they ask themselves these questions that will eventually inevitably result in this nihilistic view where, oh my gosh, I'm in an existential crisis. I have no idea what my life is actually supposed to be for. Or some people may realize it very later on when they think that a successful life is what they desire. But once they've reached everything that they always desire or wanted to have, like, get a good spouse, a good house, good car, good job, good kids, they are still not satisfied. And then I think that's why people get a midlife crisis, because it's that, when you're in your 50s, you finally achieved all these things, and you realize you're still not satisfied. And then you're like, what am I actually doing here? Yeah. So I think that's like, a lot of times I've been really stuck in that thought process.
Yeah. And that's one of the like foundations of a purpose-driven life. Like, we have to understand that what actually drives our life. So what you said, many people are driven by the thought of success, materialism, this nihilistic view of getting a good job and living it out and then perishing away after. And it's so sad to see that so many people don't even consider what's going to happen after they die. Like, they don't even know what's going to happen, and they don't even want to stop and actually think about what's going to happen to them. So we need
what has happened to this, like, even if we consider, like, there are many people who don't believe in any religion, and they believe in, like, the universe is meant to be. So, like, it just really scares me, like, even to think of the fact that, wait, what happens when I'm dead? Like, does that mean that I'm just going to be roaming around in this world and doing nothing, like just being a ghost and haunting people. Yeah, so like it just scares. But then like when we consider of the fact of purpose of our life, I think we personally need to look at where did our life start from. For example, if we take an iPhone, all right, and we go and ask, what's the purpose of this phone? If you really need to know the purpose of this phone, we go and ask the person who invented it. So then we would go and probably ask Steve Jobs, what's the purpose of your phone? Why did you even create it? So always when you search the purpose of a product or a service, we always go towards the person who actually created it or invented it. So just like that, even we all very well know that the creator or the inventor of our life is God.
And here's the thing. It's not only that we have to necessarily follow his purpose for our lives. It's that we just don't function if we do not. In the same sense that if a coffee machine tries to be a printer, it will not function. We are made to be something that we should be.
Exactly. So basically knowing.
Yes.
And yeah, so I just want to ask you guys, like, why should we know what our purpose is in life? Like, I can give you guys an example. So knowing your purpose gives meaning to your life.
Yes.
For example, the coffee machine, if it knows that it has to make coffee, then it gives it meaning. That if people want to use it to make coffee, then they can do it. It gives that meaning.
Yeah.
So,
and like personally, if I check it, like if I keep Christianity out, and if I check on ourselves in a way, like for example, if I'm trying to think of my purpose of my life, first thing that would hit on me is that my purpose is to reach the goals and make money and be successful. And then, so why do we need to know the purpose of our life? To know that exactly where our end to our path is and how do we achieve that goal. So that's like in a non-Christian perspective, but then we Christians, like we believe that our purpose is from God, which we'll be touching later. But in a non-Christian perspective, I think that's what everybody thinks, that our whole sole purpose, for example, if I take a president, the sole purpose of that president, the purpose of his life is to make the country better, to develop the economy, give people jobs, improve the industries, and just make it the most powerful economy of the world. So yeah, so like...
And it's interesting because even from a non-Christian perspective, let's say psychology, right? I'm studying psychology. Humans, positive emotions are regulated through goals, but it's not necessarily achieving goals. It's more so the perception of advancement towards the goals. So ultimately, at the end of it all, we must have a goal so high, so perfect, that it's virtually impossible for us to achieve, which is to be like Christ, because Christ was perfect, but we as Christians are to imitate him. So yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And also speaking on this, like, it came to my mind that like there are many people who think that they were born by accident, and they thought that like, they were not meant to be in this world. For example, like my brother and I were twins, and well, I do know that my parents did plan for another child because my sister barely wanted another member in the family, and like one of us were not expected. Like we do know that the person who comes last is a non-expected one. So well, we don't know that. We don't know that. Maybe they just tried you and you were not good enough, so they just took me out. But yeah, so like if I'm a youngest, in my young ages, like I would always think like, wait, so like one of us was not expected, and like who was expected from both of us? Like, and also like does this mean that my parents saw it as a struggle, like to have another extra child to come out, like because most parents, like some parents budget their income, and then accordingly they, even if they're having children, they'll make sure that look, you can afford to give this child the best. And now another extra child comes and like, oh my god, like now I have to double my budget. So yeah, and then but then as Christians, for example, on accident birth, your parents, or if it's a partner, like it may be an illegitimate process, but then always the child that comes out of it is always legitimate, because that sperm should fertilize with that egg, and that's the only way that a child will be born. So whatever it is, that we children are never illegitimate. Like whatever it is, it was all meant to be.
Yeah. I just want to briefly mention this. It's that nothing happens out of coincidence, right? We as Christians, this is fundamental to our beliefs, and It's that you were an idea in the mind of God long before the universe existed. So that's where we derive our self-worth, because just if you think about this deeply enough, that should give you a lot of dignity. That should make you think, okay, God really thought of me before anything ever existed, and then created the mediums through which it would exist. So the universe, the stars, the matter, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, all of that. And then he created me. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And whether you believe in God or not, just imagine that you were an idea in the mind of God long before the universe ever existed, before time, space, or anything. How would this change how you look at yourself? And how would this change how you look at others? Especially when you belittle yourself or others.
Yeah, that's true. And that's a good one. And I just want to bring this Bible verse. It says in Job 12, chapter 12, verse 10, it says that it is God who directs the lives of his creatures, everyone's life in his power. So it is always God who directs everything. And also just being on like currently in the world, like we all, like how we just discussed before, when we try to look at our purpose of our life, we try to look at within ourselves. And I think everybody literally fails because nobody tries to come up with the proper definition or the proper reason why they live. So then maybe we should take a step further and just check out of ourselves. And that's when we discover God, because God is something outside us that we have no control on, but God has control on us. So that's when we like step outside and we think that, look, the next version to discover this is by stepping into God. And we all know that like God has predestined us, like before we were born. He took and he wrote exactly the whole plan that he has for us. And God was also thinking about you before he even created the whole world. Yeah. So yeah, speaking on that, like what do you guys think on we being predestined to be born and we done in God's plan for it?
Yeah, and really that's a really interesting topic, right? And I think like even linking with like the doubt or the question of like, oh, am I actually an accident, right? And I just was thinking about this verse, and I recommend everyone who ever doubted your purpose in life, or God's or whether you're an accident, to read this verse. It's in Psalms 139, verse 13 to 16. So it says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." And so even from that moment when you were conceived all the way to when you began developing as an embryo in your mother's womb, especially back then when people had no idea how this process is, right? And it just goes like, a lady's abdomen just like expands and then plop, a baby comes out. It's actually amazing. And to know that you are actually created from that sort of process, like you as a human being right now, no matter how big or tall or shorter you are, it like, and with all of your complex thoughts and emotions and intellect, that you were just formed through that process. And also even more amazingly that all of your life, it says all the days ordained for me were written in your book. They were written in God's book before any one of them came to be. So God already had our life planned, and he willed for us to exist. And so it's not we are never an accident. God never writes a script for one child and then oops, like the devil comes and makes it two child, and then I guess the second child is not planned. No, the Satan never does anything to create like life. All Satan cares about is death. So any life that is created by God. And so every single life, even if if you're a twin, even if you're a triplet, you were planned by God, in a way that you couldn't even think about.
Yeah, him standing outside of time, space, and matter. He knows the beginning and the end of everything. So there's no surprises with God.
And I think that knowing that gives us a new perspective on how to live our life. Since we know that our Creator thought of us way before time, way before Earth happened, an idea in His mind, and then we just know how blessed we are to even be given life in this earth.
Yes, I agree.
Opportunity, like
it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not very bio. I don't have much of a bio knowledge or anything, but then like the way how I studied at school is that like there's so many sperm cells, and it's just that this one sperm cell that reaches the ovary or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then so
the egg.
The egg. Sorry, the egg. Yeah, so reaches the egg, and like you are like one of that million, like a million.
Yeah.
So you're one of that million. So like
now it's in the millions.
Yeah, and you are definitely chosen and meant to be. It's not just an accident.
Exactly.
And like it also says that in the Bible that God literally knows the number of hair in our head.
Yes.
I myself, I don't know how much of hair. And like for example, when Gio usually goes like bald, so like then it's a bit more difficult. But like me having my hair, like I myself, it's I don't know the amount of hair I have on my head. So like God, that shows that God knows about ourselves more than we even know about ourselves.
Yes.
So yeah,
intimately.
Yeah, it's like this. For example, even if you take the story of David, in the start, he was this guy who was just left alone and just not really given any attention by his brothers or anything at all. And then suddenly a person comes and says, no, David sees Goliath. And then what we see is he never really questioned the fact that he can't do it. He really felt like maybe this was his purpose to defeat Goliath. And he understood God's exactly. And that really motivated him to really go defeat Goliath. And just like that, even Moses, once he fled the Pharaoh's place, he thought that his purpose of really living, he didn't really have a purpose.
Yeah, like after he murdered another Egyptian
or something, he got scared and he fled.
Yeah.
And then it was really then when God again came back to him and spoke to him in this burning bush, and again re-gave him a purpose. And really that purpose is one of the greatest miracles that is there in the Bible right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, God, even if you feel like you're just this left out person that just does not have any reason to live and just you feel neglected, you need to understand that God selects people like that.
Yes.
To do His miracles and just to do His will. Yeah, I mean, like the perfect example we have is Ronald. So when Ronald was sitting around,
yeah, go on.
That's what I'm saying. You didn't mention that you didn't have much friends and you were seated in the canteen after the whole lunch.
Oh, yeah.
And still how God still chose you.
Yeah.
You may have felt insignificant, but God knows that you are extremely valuable and He chose you to become a Christian. So yeah, that's like once again.
Yeah. It's a common theme in the Bible that God often chooses unfit people for His very complex purposes. For example, me, I was such a big sinner back when God found me, yet He still chose me and said, no, this is it, this is Him. So I think it's pretty amazing that God works that way.
Yeah, there's this saying that I saw somewhere, and it was, God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's cold.
Yeah, that's cold.
But yeah, and even during your testimony, Ronald, I heard you when you began to have those questions before you met the guy. You're like, why on earth am I even here? I think that's a lot of questions that all of us actually have. Why should we spend time in earth? Why can't we just go to heaven if God loves us so much? So I just wanted to address, like, why do you guys think that God put us in earth first rather than just directly in heaven? Like, what do you guys think of that?
I think for this one, you gotta, like, once again, as with any question, go back to the Bible, right? Like, it's very interesting, and I think it's something that I wouldn't have really found an answer to if not for, I guess the Bible. In Genesis, in the creation story, God created Adam and Eve and placed them in the Garden of Eden. And what He told them to do was to be fruitful and multiply, and to tend the garden, right? So those were like the two main commands, if I'm not wrong, that God actually gave Adam and Eve. So firstly, to be fruitful and multiply. So in that, you can think of that in the biological sense, which is to populate the earth, to have children, right? But you can also think of that in even in the what later on Jesus kind of expounded on that in the sense of becoming fruitful spiritually, to have spiritual children, spiritual family, right? Because it can't just be a biological thing. If not, Jesus wouldn't have fulfilled it as well, right? He didn't have children. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is also tending the garden. So it's very interesting. So God placed Adam and Eve in a garden to work it. So they called them, they literally called them to be gardeners, and literally he called them to work it. So he actually, so like work is something that is one of the main purposes that God actually created us.
God is a God of work.
Yeah, exactly. He is the God of work.
He worked for 7 days, and 6 and then rested.
Exactly. He worked to create everything that we know of, today, and he rested for the 7th day. So,
and to this day, he still works on every level of reality.
Even though we don't see it, he's still working.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times we ask ourselves, why is our work so mundane? Or why is our work such a drab? Or, why am I not receiving any joy from it? And so maybe it's time to really go back to think about, hey, actually God intended for me to work not in a way that I really hate, but he intended for the work to be joyful.
Yes.
To be meaningful, to really bless ourselves, for us to achieve fulfillment from it. And it was really only after the fall when God kind of cursed Adam and Eve, right? In the sense that he said that whatever work that Adam does will be very laborsome, will be very toilsome. That even it's a word, like
you have to work hard to achieve it.
Yeah, and it will be very not easy. It wouldn't feel good. Yeah. So in that sense, it's like how I view it is that when we choose to reject God and pursue our own idea or our own purposes in life, we will often find that the things that we are doing, the things that we are working for, has very shallow meaning and purpose to it, because it is not founded in God. Meanwhile, if I actually go into work on something that God intends for me to work on, that is my purpose, I'm able to actually derive great, deep, fulfilling joy from that work, because it is what God intended for me to do in the first place.
Yeah, and it's not only that, it's the fact that since we're swimming against the current, we'll have to work much harder than God intended us to. But I think maybe one of the reasons why we're here on earth instead of just in heaven with God is to help each other. I think service to each other is very fundamental for our faith. And in a way, this is how God differentiates his people from the people who don't want to follow him and don't want to be with him. So it says here on Matthew 25, verses 31st to 46, it says, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people from one another as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats." So what this means is that he intends heaven to be perfect. Therefore, he wants only the people that want to be with him and that want to follow him, which is ultimately the good people, because as long as you follow God, you're good. He wants heaven to be that way. So that's one of my ideas why maybe we're here.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also, it's come to my attention, I found this, it said life is also like a temporary assignment. So God put us in here, and our identity is in eternity, and your homeland is in heaven. But he gives us these tests, these sufferings, and this workload to prepare us for eternal life, basically. So what we need to understand is, although we're going to feel a lot of discomfort, dissatisfaction in our life, your life on earth is not the complete story.
Yeah.
Rather, your life on earth, what I believe is trying to build a relationship with God.
And it's ultimately for his glory that we're here, to glorify his name. But he also wants to share that glory with us, in the sense that with every tribulation and trials that we face, there's such a triumph and glory in overcoming that And this goes back to the question that we addressed: why does God allow suffering? It's because the overcoming of suffering is such a good experience that God wants to share with us.
Yeah. And I was also thinking about this, like, one, more aspect of why we're created, right? And it's ultimately, when God created Adam and Eve, he also desired a relationship with them. He desired to know them and for them to know him, and to have that close bond, that it's not just, like a bond between creator and created, but even a bond like a friend to a friend, or a father to children. So, it's all of the different relationships that we've derived meaning from on this earth actually ties back to our original relationship with us and God. It's all facets of it, all of different relationships in our life can be found in our relationship with God. And so and I think that's why sometimes when we feel far from God, distant from God, when we haven't really been talking to him much, or really thinking about him much, even when we feel like our relationship with God is strained, that's when we can also feel that emptiness. That's when we can also feel that the lack of purpose in our life, because we are just left abandoned to our own devices, and God has abandoned us, and me and God will not be on talking terms anymore, or like our relationship is strained. So when I feel far from God, that's when I've felt that kind of emptiness as well, that lack of purpose. And God is a God that also gives us good gifts on this earth, like all the things that we enjoy, like a comfortable house, like, I don't know, my computer, my games, and my relationships. All of these things are given by God as good gifts for me to enjoy, not as in an ultimate sense, but just like how a loving parent would give good gifts to their children. But ultimately, it is their relationship that's the most important, and that's why I think, to me, that's another reason why I would say I'm created. Yeah, that I found out.
Yeah, that's also true. And like, also speaking on the purpose of our life, I think we sometimes need to look on regarding, if you need to find your purpose, you need to see what actually drives you in your life. So, like, for example, like,
I'm sorry, Shevon. Briefly before you mention that, I just want to say this real quick. It doesn't matter why we're here instead of in heaven, because that's not reality. The reality is that we're here. God put us here. So no matter what we want to think or how we'd like the world to be, it's not that way, right? And if you wanted it to be otherwise, then you would have to give a reason to, let's say, Hitler or Stalin or Mao, because these people were driven by the idea that non-existing is better than existing, and therefore they committed the atrocious acts they committed. So it's like, yeah, you don't want to be here. How are you going to manage that? How? Who's going to leave? How are you going to make it happen? That just leaves you through a satanic train of thought. Yeah. But yeah, keep going, Shevon.
Yeah, we have one shot in life, only one shot, not two shots. But let's not make it zero shots as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's true. So what I was trying to bring is like, what drives you in your life. Did I bring it up before on what drives you in your life?
What drive? No.
We didn't touch on that topic.
We haven't,
right? Yeah. No, I thought like I spoke about this point before. But so like, if you're trying to find our purpose in our life, I think we sometimes also need to understand that what exactly drives us in our life regarding our purpose. So like, for example, before that, like, if you check on the dictionary, the word driver means, it means either to control, to direct, or to guide, whether it's like you're driving your car, or like screwing a nail to the wall, or even putting the golf ball on the pitch. You have to guide, control, and direct it at the moment. And like, so what is the driving force in your life? And like, what do you think are some common things that are in this world that drives people in their life, like gives them a purpose in their life?
Yeah, so I think Ronald already mentioned one of the common ones, which is success and materialistic wealth.
Yeah. From the non-Christian point of view, yeah.
Yeah, so that's like a very, very common big thing, is like the success part. But then also, have you known that some things that drive people in their life is, many people are driven by guilt. for them to do things that they're not supposed to, just because of this guilt. For example, even when we speak on Moses, like my brother mentioned before, that Moses murdered this person in Egypt, this Egyptian, and he was very guilty, and
that's what led him to run away.
Yeah, and that guilt made him to drive to another direction and to run away from the place. So just like that, like many people are driven by guilt. And what do you guys think are like some other things than either guilt or success may drive people?
I think anger as well could be one of them.
Anger, yeah, that's very common.
And another thing I feel like as Asians, something that drives our purpose is our parents. You know, they just keep pushing you.
The need for approval and stuff to please others.
Yeah. Especially from traditional societies.
Yeah.
But I would say maybe more universally, what drives us human beings is perhaps truth. We want to see what's behind things. We don't like keep secrets kept from us, and that's how science arose, and that has been the question for all different cultures and societies, and how many religions arose, right? The why, truth. And maybe another one is love. We all want to feel like we belong. We all want ultimately a partner or some sort of partners, maybe for whoever's into that. Or
I mean, and like on this factor on love, like something that many teenagers, including myself, I must say, like from our young age, like we had these urges, like we need to find a girlfriend so we can love someone, like that drives us. And like it also goes to the fact that we try to dress good and buy more expensive stuff just to show something cool within us, so that like that person is attracted to us. So as teenagers, like one main factor that drives us is trying to look cool within the society, and like trying to build up this hype within ourselves just to be better than the others, or to be more upper than your fellow friends.
Yeah. And I realized actually amongst like all of the things that you guys have said, it's like there is a common theme, which is to be known by other people and to be accepted by other people. And like, and I just hear some, it just reminded me of because now I'm doing a psychiatry rotation in a hospital, and recently we were interviewing one of our patients, right? And he really feels like his life is no meaning, because all he wants in life is for people to acknowledge him. But in his mind, like, he believes that everyone is just a narcissist and everyone is just out there looking out for themselves, and no one is actually there to really approve of what he does or acknowledge his being. And so because of that, he's just always in this sort of dejected state, and he has no drive to move on in life.
I feel like that's really important nowadays, like that common theme that people are all trying to seek these earthly things rather than the eternal reward.
And I have something to mention about that. I thought of a third point that drives people, which is life. Everyone wants to keep living, because through that is how you get things in this world, no matter if they're secular, no matter if they're more deep and spiritual. It's through life that we can achieve these things. So it ultimately leads you to life, truth, and love, right? But what we don't realize is that none of these things are fully present in this world, in the sense that we don't know the ultimate truth. We can't see ultimate love unless it's through God. And life, we all die, right? So we must not look. I'm gonna put this as an analogy. It's like, if you want to see the light, you're not gonna find it under the chair. You're gonna try to look up above and see the light bulb, and that's the source of light. That's where you'll find it. In the same way, we must look at the source of life, love, truth, and this is the definition of God.
Yeah, and also just speaking on how Ronald just told that one thing that drives us is to be accepted and to be seen by the society. And something that I've seen is that like many people do these charitable things, which is very good. But then also it has gone to the fact that now doing charitable things, like how we are trying to show it out to a lot of people, like many people on TikTok. I personally feel like they don't actually like mean it in a charitable way. For example, I saw this video on TikTok of another person recording another person doing this charitable thing, and there was this beggar on the road, and that person is giving this rice packet and recording and telling the beggar, like, look, like, take the rice and open it and to eat it, and that this person gonna record it. And there was another person on the back recording this person. And like what I'm trying to say is that like we all have looked into being accepted, but and then like we try to do good things, but we actually don't mean on it, and we just do it just to be more accepted by the society and just to get more fame, and for people to think like, oh, this person like actually took the effort to spend the time and to give money on this. So like sometimes we do things even just to be accepted by the society, but we don't really mean on it.
And I think what God wants us to do is to actually mean it from our heart. And a lot of ways we can do that is we don't always have to tell everyone that we did it, because remember, whatever we do, God sees it all.
Yeah, and it's all for the glory of God.
Yeah, exactly. So regarding your question about what drives us and stuff, I think a lot of these things that we said, it's all for earthly possessions and stuff. And the entrance to heaven actually costs us our life. It costs us everything basically. And it actually says in Mark 8:35-36, if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain this whole world but lose your own soul?
Yep.
So I think this is very like pretty obvious in modern society right now. We see all these high influencers and stuff, how they're just showing off and then they're just holding on to this status and these earthly things. But then what happens if suddenly an accident happens? What's going to happen to them and everything that they owned?
Yeah, and like this also sometimes shows that they just don't really understand the actual purpose in their life also.
Yeah.
Because they look at other unearthly things.
Or maybe they could just be misguided. You know, they might think that, you know, the purpose that they have in their life is one thing. Or maybe it could originally be, you know, a noble purpose of some sort. But maybe, you know, the things of life came, the deceits of life came, you know, money, wealth, power, prestige, and glory. And they actually have detracted from their values. They're willing to sacrifice their own values, and sometimes they're even bits and pieces of their soul in exchange for what, you know, the world glorifies. Sometimes it's difficult because they don't realize it until it's too late, when their soul has already been eaten away by Satan.
Yeah, and that's another point that I wanted to make, which is taking caution, because as you already mentioned, we have an enemy, and we all know who that enemy is, which is Satan. And actually it says in John 10:10, a thief has only one thing in mind. He wants to steal, slaughter, and destroy. But I have come to give you everything in abundance, more than you expect, life in its fullness until you overflow. So thankfully for us as Christians, we are on the side of God, who through Jesus Christ has already defeated the enemy and taken back the keys of death, and we are safe and secure in him. That's why we abide in Christ. However, it is worth noting that when you are pursuing a purpose-filled life, you may attract the attraction of the enemy, and the last thing that the enemy wants is for us Christians or passionate Christians to walk the earth sharing our faith and seeing souls won for the kingdom of God. But if that's the last thing that the enemy wants, that's what we should be doing.
Amen.
Yeah, sometimes I guess the enemy leaves you alone if you're not a threat to him, right?
Exactly.
If you're in this world, you're just indulging hedonistic pleasure and not really doing anything for God, then he has nothing against you. It's only until you start proclaiming the good news and evangelizing, being of service to others, that okay, you're a threat to him.
Yeah, exactly. When you're actually doing God's business, that's when you become, you know, you raise your prominence in the spiritual realm, and that's when the enemy wants to come and get you. Yeah, and it just reminded me of when Jesus actually quoted from the prophet Isaiah, when he said that the Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free. And that was literally, what Jesus came to do, even though he did open the eyes of the blind, literally and physically, while he was on this earth. But even his ultimate sacrifice was proclaiming freedom for all of us who were enslaved under the kingdom of darkness. And that same purpose that God's Spirit, the Holy Spirit, was placed in him to do, he also gave the same Spirit to us so that we are able to fulfill the same purpose that he came down to fulfill. And to, in that sense, is to proclaim the good news, to set the captives free via what Jesus has already done on the cross. And so once we align our hearts with Jesus, our purposes with Jesus's purposes, I think that, like, at least for me, that's when I really, really feel like, okay, there is something in life that I really want to do. And I really feel like this is not just going to be for my own sake or for my own, selfish desires, but really something that what would benefit everyone and would ultimately give glory to God as well.
Yeah, and I think this is as simple as it gets. It's just all for God.
Yeah, it leaves us to the point that
given to us. And finally, I pray for the people out there who are either listening to this or not, who don't know you yet. I pray, oh Lord, that you will come into their lives either personally or through all of us who bring them your gospel, bring them your good news. And I just pray, oh Lord, that they will be able to see you when they feel lost in life, when they feel like they're just in this rat race and pressured by society. I pray that you would really come into their hearts, show yourself to them. And I pray that you will soften their hearts enough that they may be able to humble themselves and really accept you as their Lord and Savior, and really turn their face towards you and turn their eyes towards you because you love them. And I thank you once again for this privilege. And I just commit all of these things into your hands. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, Ronald, so much for the prayer. And also thank you for coming. We're truly honored to have you here to share testimony and your ideas. And on behalf of our Cornerstone, we'd like to thank everyone who's tuning in right now. Thank you guys for listening. And if you guys enjoyed this message, please remember to share this around. And just let us know if you have any questions or concerns regarding this topic. And yeah, that's all from us.
Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
Me once again. Such an honor.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. See you guys. This is our Cornerstone signing out. God bless you.